Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is Randy Wright, your captain speaking, and as always, I'm joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. We would like to take this opportunity to personally welcome you to this exciting new episode of our state-of-the-art radio program. We also know you have a choice when it comes to your radio listening pleasure and would like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. What's more, we're confident that no other radio program or venue will fly you over the friendly airwaves in as much comfort and style, nor leave you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment, quite like we can here at the Wright Flyer. Now that you're aboard, please be seated. Fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. We've taxied to the departure lane and are awaiting takeoff clearance from air traffic control. While they go through that mindless, bureaucratic red tape and regimentation, Jeremy and I shall go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist because there is a lot of news and information to get to before we may indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, I'm sure you've probably noticed that Barack Hussein Obama has doubled down on his efforts to strip decent, law-abiding American citizens of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. You know, he's made this a staggering prerogative of his regime ever since we saw the Sandy Hook shooting and, of course, the Newtown thing, and then with all of these other ones. He just wants to go outside the bounds and proper scope and application of government because he actually loathes and despises the people's ability to defend themselves. As Jeremy and I have oft-times reiterated on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, the most important fundamental and unalienable right that the people have is the right to keep and bear firearms, because that is the best right utilized to defend all of our other fundamental and unalienable rights which were endowed to us by our Creator. And you know, it's also important to pause there and remember that when we say that these fundamental and unalienable rights are endowed to us by our Creator, that means that no earthly authority, no legitimate government without due process of law can abridge those rights, belittle those rights, or take those rights away from the individual sovereign. You see, that was what was so revolutionary about our founding fathers and the type of system they devised. And it also explains why our United States Constitution, which belongs to we the people, is the longest contiguous constitutional document in all of world history. And that is saying something. But what we saw with respect to Barack Hussein Obama and his executive orders is quite frightening. You know, he's pitting doctors against patients by using a loophole in HIPAA to try and make it to where doctors report on their patients. He's also utilizing Social Security to deprive the ability of those whom he somehow deems as mentally incapable of owning a firearm from purchasing new firearms, and I have a feeling that they're going to try and expand that to be a confiscatory type of statement where they can come back and confiscate the weapons. Once again, as per our topic on last evening's program, is an impermissible bill of attainder and especially an impermissible ex post facto law. And so let's actually get into this idea about Social Security. You know, that is something that we are all forced to pay into. And it is being used in a way to deprive the American citizens of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. And that is a gross violation of the Ninth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states that no rights that are contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution should be used in a way to disparage or to encroach upon the other rights enjoyed by the people. And that just seems to go over this president's head, doesn't it, Jeremy?
Well, you know, first of all, Social Security is unconstitutional to begin with. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who don't understand how a Ponzi scheme works, is you're putting money into the coffers of something with the expectation of it to be returned to you at a higher rate of return. Well, how does that work when there's individuals out there like me when it's time for me to collect my return on investment, it's not going to be there.
It's not going to be there for anybody who's, age 30 to 45 right now, currently?
Correct. And it's absolutely not going to be there for anybody under the age of 30.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
No.
So, with it being a Ponzi scheme, which are in violation of federal law, and anything that's in violation of the law is, in fact, unconstitutional.
As per Article 6, Clause 2.
Correct. Now, I have another issue, and a group of individuals that you didn't mention, Randy.
Mm-hmm.
Military veterans.
Well, sure.
Many of our military veterans are on disability because of, they're disabled.
Well, yeah, we sent them to the battlefield, and they fought with valor for our country, and they've come back with either wounds, and they can come back with post-traumatic stress syndrome. And that's been very politicized, Jeremy, and it's being wielded as a weapon against our brave servicemen because this administration doesn't want there to be anybody, and again, I hate to use that term administration. I should have used the term regime. This regime doesn't want anybody that has the training or capability or wherewithal to stand up to their extra-constitutional activities, which he is just doubling down on because he sees the sands of time running out against him. The march of time is now moving against his regime, and I think that the population is turning against the regime as well.
And, I have a big problem with this, especially with the Social Security and especially with the disability and individuals who have to rely on that. They created it and they make it to where they can't rely on themselves anymore because they're not physically capable of doing it.
Well, and that's always the goal of these extremist utopian socialists.
Sure, and I don't have a problem with the person, getting a hand up or having, compensation when they're not able to work anymore because of physical disabilities, so on and so forth.
Sure.
But the thing is, what did our citizenry do prior to the 1940s?
Oh, it's simple.
When
they turned to charity.
They took care of themselves.
They turned to charity, and they took care of themselves. And, that's another aspect of it that the Obama regime and indeed the salivating mainstream media has been extremely intellectually disingenuous and duplicitous about. They don't mention the type of pride that a community used to have before all of these social programs came into existence. They are really, literally, destroying a person's sense of self-pride and dignity, really going against their human dignity. And that in and of itself is a very ugly aspect of this type of forced socialism.
Well, what's going on is they demoralized individuals.
Oh, absolutely.
They made them think that they are not worth anything anymore, and the only way they have to have any kind of self-worth or to be able to live and even just basically survive in many cases is to have to rely on the government. This is not what our system of government was set up for.
No.
It was set up for the individual to be able to be self-sufficient, to carry on with their lives, and to teach their offspring, our posterity, to do the same. And that has been stripped away. It is no longer the norm in this country, and it hasn't been for 100 years.
Yeah.
Looking at this, and this is all done by design. They want this to happen this way. So now, if you stand up and resist this type of activity by an illegitimate system, they want to do everything they can to shut you up, to label you, to make you look like you are the enemy, and they want to pit you against other individuals that are not cognizant of having the understanding that what there is going on in their lives is bad for them. They want to be able to basically it's
divide and conquer.
Exactly what it is. It's exactly where I was going with this.
Because what they want to do is divide the people, pit them against each other, and that makes it easier to make the people more easily manipulated, to work them against themselves, to ensure that they are very easy to take apart. And, you can look at history to see clear examples of this. If you look back to the Austro-Hungarian Empire during World War I, part of the problem was there was this rise of the so-called nationalist movements. Well, what that was is these were people that had been conquered by the Habsburg family, one of the oldest ruling dynasties in all of Europe. Mm-hmm. And they had their own language, they had their own customs and culture. So when they were sent out to the battlefield to fight against another nationalist, that being the Serbs, with the Black Hand organization, they thought, why are we fighting for this Habsburg Empire that we have no loyalty to? And that's exactly what you're seeing here, except that it's being purposefully done not through expansive imperialist tactics. Rather, the President of the United States is flooding our border with so-called Syrian refugees and these illegal aliens from South and Central America, and that is part of the so-called fundamental transformation for America that he had envisioned going all the way back to his first run at the office back in 2008.
And the other thing that bothers me about this, with the whole, utilizing the healthcare system,
it's just like Hitler.
For what it is now, it is exactly what Hitler did. Mm-hmm. Everything that this regime is doing is parallel and identical to what Hitler has done. He started with the Prevention of Progeny and Diseases Act, and then he used that to catapult and slingshot gun confiscation, which then brought about the Enabling Act, which is nothing more than a nationalized version of martial law.
Yep.
To the highest totalitarian extreme. And that's what we're seeing coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
And if we don't stand up and do something about it, then it's going to continue that way. History will repeat itself. And who better to stand up and defend against that than the United States citizenry?
Absolutely.
And again, this is not a call to arms to rise up, march down the streets, and start yanking politicians out of their office. That's not what we're saying here.
This is a call to conscience. This is a call to remember our spirit, our character, our heritage, but above all, our national identity. Because, Jeremy, we've all but forgotten it. True.
And, people want to have this idea of, you have all these different groups out on social media, the 3%ers and,
right.
The Oath Keepers and this, and not to disparage, the military veterans and those who took an oath to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, not to disparage their oath that they took and the sacrifices they made by any shape of the way. But when you have individuals within those organizations that seem to think and tout this idea of, well, we'll just go take over this federal building, or we'll just go and do this, or we'll go and do that, that is counterintuitive and counterproductive of what needs to be done.
You do something like that after you had a concentrated base, after you had a nationalized movement, or let's say...
And as an absolute last resort.
Right. And that would be the difference between, say, the Alamo situation, like what we mentioned on last evening's program, and this. The Alamo, that was a last gasp. That was, yes. Oh my God, Antonio Lopez de Santana is just marching up here at breakneck speed, and if we don't take a stand somewhere, he's just going to wallop the entire Texian forces. Well, that's not what we have here.
Correct. And, a lot of people want to associate, activities like that as a show of power. Well, folks, here's the thing. People don't truly understand what real power is. Knowledge is power. This is why we are so emphatic about everybody understanding the Constitution, knowing what it means to have the ability and the obligation and duty to maintain your rights. If you have that and you have that clarity with that. That is all the power you need.
And you know, Jeremy,
because with that,
there's a historical aspect that illustrates your point. You know, I mentioned the Alamo, but if you go back to 1824, there was an attempt by some of the Texian colonists to revolt. It was early, it was premature, and they were crushed. And the thing is, some of the other militiamen turned against them because at that time there wasn't this type of identity with it, because they hadn't come to a point yet where tyranny had reigned, because you at that point had the Constitution of 1824. And for those of you who don't know, the Constitution of 1824 in Mexico mirrored the United States Constitution. Why? Because it was based off of it.
Correct. And this actually goes deeper into what we just spoke about a few moments ago, this whole divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
When this regime and this totalitarian, wannabe potentate, sawed-off dictator looks at stuff like this, when you see these separate little sects and factions within these larger organizations, they're going to point to that and they're going to use that as propaganda to destroy the whole entire thing. So we have to be careful as patriots, as United States citizens, on what our activities and courses of action truly are. You have to think things through. You have to be very vigilant with it, but at the same time, you have to have an understanding of how things may play out and what those consequences will be should you act on something like that, and you had better be willing to accept those consequences. If we had 10,000 people storm Washington, D.C., again, this is a hypothetical situation, a what if 10,000 people stormed Washington, D.C., took over the seats of power there, the seats of government, took every single representative, congressman, the whole gamut, took them all out at gunpoint and detained them, our system of government would cease to exist at that point.
And you know, we'd have to go into this with a design already in place. Of course, the Constitution is the design.
Exactly.
But do we have enough people agreed on that to move forward with it? That would be the lingering, important question that would be on my mind. That nagging question, if you will.
And that was the whole premise of the Constitutional Convention that took place on May 25th in 1787. That when that started, they had that design. They met. They were already in concert with each other discussing.
Well,
this.
and you know, it goes back before that.
Years prior.
It goes back before that because their immediate stopgap came within the first year of war, and that was the Articles of Confederation. Yes. Were they perfect?
Yes.
No. But they got the job done during the time of war. So take, for instance, you know how there was the way that Lincoln tried to use the Articles of Confederation to push his idea of perpetual, inescapable, or unbreakable union.
Yeah.
He quoted the Articles of Confederation. Well, it makes sense that in a time of war, when you're fighting for your inception, your existence, that would make sense to have it be a perpetual union. However, that was not the language that was used in the Constitutional Convention. And so you see, of course, there's going to be differences in a time of war than in a time of peace. But to rush into something without a plan is just foolhardy.
And, you know, to make the point even more resounding, getting to the issue of, you know, our government, the way it's functioning now, it's not good for the people, the things that are happening. It's violative of our rights. They're being stripped away every single day. But, again, you cannot just go off half-cocked and say, well, you're taking my rights. No, we're just going to, you know, wipe you out. It doesn't work that way. Again, this is why they set up the Constitutional Convention. They had mapped it out. They had a meeting of the minds on how to take the Articles of Confederation for what they were and dissolve them and then reestablish our seat of government. It would take so much more in today's time to do that if with given all of the other countries around us and the other powers in the world, like Russia, China, Iran, if that was to happen, it would severely be detrimental to the citizenry here in the United States, because then it would actually bring on an onslaught of an invasion, an attempted invasion, and it would be years before we would be able to actually repel it enough and be able to secure our country, all at the same time trying to rebuild our form of government. Now, it is our duty as citizens, when the government becomes to the tyrannical extremes that it does, to throw off such government and replace it with new on the founding principles of the Constitution and natural law.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're at that point yet, and I pray to God we never have to get to that point, because when we do, it is going to be so daunting.
Well, yeah,
that it will break people. And again, folks, let's face it, we don't really have the sharpest knives in the drawer in this country anymore. What our founding fathers did back then, and compared that to, I mean, who would we have in this country that would be able to do this? I can count count people on maybe one hand and still have fingers left over. That's not enough. This is why we need everybody online with this and understanding the Constitution and what it takes to be able to be prepared and obligated and show duty in maintaining our rights.
Now, you know, another way that some of these proposed executive orders for gun confiscation or gun control, or whatever label we want to give it, is that Obama wants to create a national registry for it. And, you know, here's the other thing. With the Social Security thing, or the doctors reporting it through that loophole for law enforcement purposes in the HIPAA Act, which I thought was designed to protect patient privacy. Boy, is this not a violation of that law. But anyway, to do this without due process, that is a gross violation of our constitutional rights. And above that, it's a gross violation of just the tenets of legality in general. Because what it is doing is it is saying, you know, the laws were written in a way to prevent this kind of stuff, but we're just going to ignore the laws to move forward with President Barack Hussein Obama's agenda to turn the United States of America into a banana republic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Chiquita in chief. Yeah. So, and you know, again, going back to this with this gun registry thing, this national gun registry. Well,
Hitler did that.
Sorry, but Hitler did that. Stalin did that. Mao, name it, and they've done it. The fact of the matter is, I'm a bit not perturbed, but actually, I'm kind of laughing at the statement that the Attorney General Loretta Lynch made, something to the effect of, "Well, those that think they're going to avoid the registry, we will track them down." Guess what, Miss Attorney General? You don't have to track me down. I'm already here. You already know where I'm at. I'm not hard to find.
Hey, you know, Attorney General Lynch, do yourself a favor. Why don't you go back and...
Resign.
Resign, but also go back and read the Constitution. It will help you realize just how wrong you are. Stop reading the Communist Manifesto. Stop reading Mein Kampf. Those are not compatible with the American way. Those are not compatible with our natural law tenets, and they have no place in a free and open society like the United States of America. Why is it that Obama wants to join the who's who of dictators? That is not an illustrious group to belong to. It is certainly not one that coincides with American values. But that's the problem. Obama has never adhered to or espoused American values. He has always been diametrically opposed to the wills, hopes, aspirations, and desires of the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, we the people. And it is disgusting to see the way that he keeps trying to skirt around our fundamental and unalienable rights. It goes to this whole laughable thing of how he has an army of attorneys, a so-called army of attorneys trying to find how it's legal. Well, those attorneys, if they're going to live up to their oath of office, should quite easily say there is no way around it. The United States Constitution, as per Article 6, Clause 2, is the supreme law of the land. The Second Amendment says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And oh, by the way, this little thing in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3 says that this would be an ex post facto law and bill of attainder, and that would be a violation. And oh, by the way, an executive order is not law.
And by the way, you want to implement this, I will file an AO-91 federal criminal complaint against you, citing Title 18 U.S. Code Sections 241 and 242, along with Title 42 U.S. Code Section 1983.
But you know, these attorneys won't ever do it. And you know why? It's because they were educated... Well,
gutless.
No, it's because they were educated in critical legal theory. We are talking about a theory that had infiltrated our institutions of legal education here in the United States that are based off of nihilism and Marxism. They were designed to question and eviscerate the Constitution. You know, it's sort of like how the ACLU was designed to use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution.
To destroy it.
That is the mindset that you see with these supposed officers of the court that are, you know, basically the court jesters of this tyrannical regime.
And trust me, they want to start dancing around in little, you know, purple and green hats with bells on them and bells on their feet. I'll point and laugh at them all day, because guess what? I don't intend to lose. I will, again, as I've mentioned before, with my dying breath if need be, defend my rights and the rights of the American people. I will not fault in that, I will not halt in that, and I will stand firm. And if it takes me being put up and made as an example of, in order for everybody else's rights are protected, then so be it. But I guarantee you, I don't lose.
You know what's funny is that Obama referred to himself, let me see, make sure that I get this right, 76 times in his 12-minute speech about this. It's always I, me, and He always says, But, well, how narcissistic can you get? Really, how narcissistic can you get that you have to refer to yourself 76 times when you're trying to strip decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms? You know what it comes down to? It's that he thinks the world revolves around him. He thinks he is a microcosm of this entire universe, and that we should all revolve around him as if he is the F-double prime sun.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Let's go ahead and give him an attachment onto his name, kind of like, you know, give it a little bit of prestige. We can call him Herr Adolf Obama, STFU.
It works.
How's that?
The .stfu is his degree.
Yes.
You know, it just goes to show how deplorable our government has become. If there has ever been a question as to whether this government is operating in a fashion that is diametrically opposed to the individual sovereigns in this country, need you ask more than to look at using things like the Social Security Act to ban people from owning firearms. And you know what's really disturbing about the whole Social Security thing, other than the fact that it's unconstitutional? It's the way that it was sold to the people back during FDR's administration, or another regime. Mm-hmm. It was said that, Social Security will never be used as an identifying system. It will never be used as a way to codify or record the people. Oh, wait a minute. What?
Isn't that what it does?
That's exactly what it does.
That's exactly what it does. Yeah. FDR.
Well, he stood firm
felonious
for principles.
Yeah. Felonious dictatorship of a regime. Yeah. FDR. Good old
felonious dictator.
Good old
Rex,
Stumpy.
You know, Latin for king. I mean, gosh. And think about it, folks. The whole reason that we had to amend the Constitution to limit the president to holding only 2 terms of office was because of the number of terms that FDR sought during his lifetime. And, you know, Yeah,
4.
and here's the thing. Why was it that before FDR, all presidents adhered to a two-term system? Well, it was to respect the example set by our first commander-in-chief, George Washington. You see, people, they didn't respect the history. They still don't respect the history. And if you don't have a fluent and working knowledge of both the Constitution and the history surrounding the Constitution, it becomes quite easy for these deleterious forces to move in and suffocate the representative Republican system of government that our founding fathers worked so hard with their tears, sweat, blood, and toil to build.
And I honestly have to say that, given the situation with this, and you mentioned this, executive action and executive orders carry no weight with law whatsoever, and that's absolutely true. Because anything that anybody does, it doesn't matter if you are a local dog catcher or you're the president of the United States. Any action you take that is violative of the constitutional rights of the American citizens, that action is void. Right there on the spot, void. Because it has no standing, because no thing. If you read Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, it specifically says anything. The word any, and then the word thing, that is capitalized, showing to be a pronoun, meaning attached to an inanimate object, or to a person, that is contrary to the Constitution is notwithstanding, meaning it has no viability and legal authority to exist.
Yep.
Period.
And, I gotta love the way that Obama shed those crocodile tears when he was giving his speech, that little spiel. Huh. It just goes to show that these radical extremist left-wingers, when they are moving to deprive decent, hard-working American citizens, the individual sovereigns, the ultimate sovereigns of this country, of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear arms, but he's trying to say, save the children, let's use emotionalism to deprive and rob the people of everything that is near and dear about this country, everything that made this country great. Why do we allow these emotional arguments to continue unabated, unabashed, allowed to go forward? It's stupid. And more than that, it's dangerous.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Who else bolstered up the use of children as pawns of propaganda? Well, that would
Stalin,
be Adolf Hitler.
Mao.
In Mein Kampf, Joseph Stalin. Mein Kampf. In Mein Kampf, this is a direct quote from Mein Kampf from Adolf Hitler. The state must declare the child to be the most precious treasure of the people. As long as the government is perceived as working for the benefit of the children, the people will happily endure almost any curtailment of liberty and almost any deprivation.
Yep.
There you have it. Game, set,
it's interesting.
Match.
A Missouri woman says that gun rights saved her life. She was basically facing down a criminal that was wanting to either rape or rob or kill her, and she was able to save herself. This is the sort of real story that the president doesn't want to talk about when he mentions his sort of stupid empirical stories, those unrelated things of, I know at least 72% of American gun owners support this bill, or actually executive action, to strip them of their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms, because they don't have rights. Only I have rights. The world revolves around me. I, me, 76 times in this short speech. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You know who else did stuff like that? Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, Pol Pot, Castro.
Yeah. Again, there's no difference. They're cut from the same tyrannical cloth, with the same 300 count potentate thread. They should be careful what they sow, unless they're willing to reap the consequences of it, because what's going to happen? And remember, Obama even talked about himself. I think I'd make a great president for a third term. Really? And this goes again to the question that I had regarding... Correct. And it goes again to the question that I have of if he's such a constitutional scholar and attorney and taught the Constitution at, Podunk University in Chicago, again, why does he have to consort with other legal minds in regards to something being of constitutional stature
to pull
and
the
legality?
wool over the eyes of the American people? Because he knows that what he's doing is illegal.
To give the perception to the people that he wants to say, well, I want to make sure I'm doing this for the benefit of you. It's exactly what that is. He's pulling the wool over their eyes. He knows the Constitution inside and out. He knows exactly what it is. This is, again, the mantra and the mindset from communists, straight from Roger Nash Baldwin and Crystal Eastman with the ACLU when they incorporated that bastion of filth and evil. They want to use the Constitution to destroy it. He knows the Constitution. He knows exactly what he can do inside the Constitution, and he doesn't care. He will not,
it's not that he doesn't
adhere
care.
to it.
He knows the Constitution to destroy the Constitution. It's like Mao's little red book, his little red book and the Iron Rice Bowl and that type of cultural revolution they carried out. You will see this anywhere that a communist dictatorship takes control. Or any type of socialist government, for that matter. They always denigrate what came before. They always attack the system that came before. They always attack the traditions and the basic aspects and institutions of a society, because that is what they have to do. They have to obliterate what came before in order to dupe the people into believing that their type of communism is a new system that will improve things. It's almost like the Cloward-Priven principle, which is designed to overwhelm the auspices of government so that the people fall to their knees and beg for more government as if that is the solution. So in other words, government runs around creating the problem and then offers a solution. I mean, how duplicitous and intellectually disingenuous can you get?
Sure. And it speaks to to volumes of being able to take something, utilizing it to destroy it. It's almost like, just to kind of give a different perspective on this from like the comic book world. You have an individual. It reminds me of the movie Spider-Man, and I believe it was the second one where they had Dr. Octopus, built this machine that just, this giant storm or whatever. That machine was used and built for the destruction of things, but the machine was also used to destroy itself. It could have been used for good, but it wasn't. The parallels here is the Constitution is all that is good, right, and just in regards to natural law and our system of government. They don't like that. They want to destroy it, so they're going to use the Constitution to destroy it. So instead of doing that, they want to use it for evil purposes instead.
Just to kind of point this out, going back to the doctors thing, where they want doctors under HIPAA and under the various laws that are already in place to report so-called mentally ill patients to the FBI. It's quite fascinating to know that under the federal rules of evidence, they got rid of the privilege of physician-patient privilege. They got rid of that with the federal rules of evidence. That was passed in 1938. Guess who was president? Why, it was FDR. So, you see, history has a pattern here. You see the types of wannabe potentates that come in and put in their dictatorial edicts, and all of a sudden, that starts the unraveling of all of the sacred institutions that were once held in high regard and esteem here in the United States. And you want to know what one of the latest victims is? It's the institution of marriage. People are blasé about it in some cases, saying, why does that really matter? Why do we care? You know, it reminds me of that ad you see on TV. I'm sure you've seen these. Love has no labels, and they have the skeletons kissing behind the X-ray machine, and then it's these lipstick lesbians coming out, and it's like, oh, yay, they're lipstick lesbians, goody goody gumdrops. Except that what they're trying to do is normalize a perverse behavior. And that's what government has been doing for such a long time now. And this is a part of it. This arms ban, for some, you know, it's just the start. It's always a step. And it goes back to that little quote that goes from World War II about, well, at first they went for this group, and I did nothing. Then they went for this other group, and I didn't do nothing. Or, you know, I didn't do anything because it was not me. But then there was nobody to come when they came for me.
Yeah, and I want to give everybody a couple of quotes from Obama's little, you know, diuretic episode he had today. He said, every single year, more than 30,000 Americans have their lives cut short by guns. 30,000. Suicides, domestic violence, gang shootouts, accidents, hundreds of thousands.
Out of a population of, what, 300 million, give or take?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's small.
Right. Now, yes, now, it goes on to say hundreds of thousands of Americans have lost brothers and sisters or buried their own children. So it went from 30,000
wow,
to
that's
hundreds of thousands of Americans. Sure. Then he goes on to say, no matter how many times people try to twist my words around, I taught constitutional law. I know a little bit about this. I get it. But I also believe that we can find ways to reduce gun violence consistent with the Second Amendment. Guess what? You're a fraud. You're a liar. You are a behemoth of an asshat, is what you are. Because when you say things like this, you're doing it for nothing more than a dog and pony show. It's pure propaganda. You're taking... It's theatrics. You're taking information, putting your own twist on it. What you are doing, Adolf Obama, is nobody's twisting your words around. You're twisting the sanctity and sovereignty of the United States citizen and the Constitution around.
He's doing what utopian socialists always do. They project. And it's because he's afraid of people twisting his words on him, because he knows that he doesn't have the ability to really fight back against that. And it's because he is an intellectually disingenuous person. He doesn't have any core principles or fundamental beliefs other than Marxism, government, power, totalitarianism, and control. But what sort of belief system is that? It's not based on natural law. It's based on the failed precepts of some madman from the 19th century named Karl Marx, somebody who saw marriage as legalized prostitution and wanted to do everything within his power to destroy the family, which, if you stop and think about it, folks, the family, the nuclear family, is the fundamental building block of society. It is what is stabilizing of a society. It is what propagates a society. It is what secures a society. Yeah.
Sure. Now, let's go back to this 30,000 Americans who die by suicides. Okay, here's the thing, folks. Suicides, domestic violence, gang shootouts, and accidents. More people die in vehicles by those same circumstances. Suicides, people driving themselves off a bridge or into a lake, or domestic violence, running over their spouse or their partner, whatever, whoever it may be. Gang shootouts, drive-bys, does that come to mind? And how about accidents altogether?
What it really comes down to, Jeremy,
I tell you what,
nerdface Bernie Sanders, well, it's actually climate change, Jeremy. That's what's killing people.
Yeah. Yeah, who by the way, folks, was endorsed today by Tom Cotton. So, you know, yeah. And honestly, I didn't see that one coming, but hell, nothing surprises me anymore. Yes, I like that sound there. Here's the thing. You want to have regulations.
Control.
This isn't about guns. This is not about gun control. It's about control, period. They want to take guns and make them the evil enemy. We've said this numerous times before. More people die by way of motor vehicles than guns and firearms in this country every single year. You want to have regulations, you want to put things in place, why don't you regulate vehicles? Oh, well, we've done that, and other states have done it, whatever. Yeah, guess what? Why don't you wrap your bangy lips on the end of a tailpipe and breathe deep? Because you are doing nothing more than labeling, which is a classic tactic of propagandists used by the Nazis. Period. You're labeling an inanimate object as being the cause of this. 30,000 Americans lose their lives by guns? That may or may not be true. And the fact of the matter is, suicides happen.
Right.
More people hang themselves with rope or other instruments besides using a gun to kill themselves.
The suicide numbers, I bet they're not parsing it for gun suicide versus non-suicides. So already this is not scientific. It's just like the farce of man-made global warming, where they sit there and fudge the numbers. Well, this is what they're doing, folks.
Yep.
This is your Common Core type math at work.
Mm-hmm. So, it's understandable, or it should be understandable, why I have a problem with this. I don't like being lied to. But guess what, Adolf Obama? The truth has no agenda. What we speak here is the truth. You are a liar. You're being disingenuous. You've always been disingenuous. You don't care about this country. You claim that you do, you don't. You are lying to the American people. You do not care about this country. If you did, you would do the best and most patriotic thing that any person could do. And I'll leave it at that.
Why didn't he go back and roll back the easing that he's done on those K visas, those marriage visas, where Tashfeen Malik, the wife of that insane terrorist Saeed Farouk Durka, came into this country via that. That was Obama that had made that easier. It was Obama that gave the State Department the okay to just ignore the applications, to just look the other way, because he wanted to push forward this cancerous, politically correct doctrine that, look, that has actually killed people. That has more blood on its hands than an inanimate object. I've never seen my AK-47 get up, run down the street, and shoot Crack Whore Sally at the corners of Down and Out Street. Just haven't seen it. But I have seen a bunch of...
I haven't seen it either.
...of Islamo-fascists use our laws against us to kill us. I have seen that. And I've seen that the government that has tried to get more and more spying and espionage against the American people, violating the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is very clear and concise in its language, and its prohibition against unreasonable searches and seizures, and the warrant requirement. I've seen that not work, where this all metadata, all this crap that they've been gathering, I've seen it not do a blessed thing. And then for dubious Marxists to run out there and say that we just need to double down on that, and Ted Cruz is wrong for wanting to protect the Constitution, or to be even worse, that El Jefe going out there and saying nobody's liberties are being violated. These guys are just as bad as the potentate in chief.
Well, sure, and they should actually be labeled as accomplices or accessories to these crimes, because exactly, co-conspirators, and that's what this is. They are conspiring against the American people. Now, you know what I have seen, Randy? I have seen individuals in places where the most strictest gun laws in the country have failed, because we've had gang shootouts in Chicago. In fact, I believe Obama even mentioned that today in his speech. Let me see where I can find it here.
Well,
I'm not seeing it. It must have been redacted.
Either way,
taken
he's
out.
not going. He's not doing this to stop gang violence in Chicago. He's doing this to control us.
No, absolutely not. He's doing it to create more victims. Because here's the thing: if victimization ever had an ugly face,
if he ever had a child, it would be victimization.
Just like if he had a son, if he had a son, it could have been Trayvon Martin. But if victimization ever had a face, it could be his, because what he's doing, when I say victimization, he is victimizing the American people. You're creating victims by depriving them of the ability and the unalienable right to defend themselves. It's not your job to protect us. It's not the law enforcement's job to protect us.
It's their job
we
to
are to protect ourselves.
And let's look at what Obama has done. Has he faithfully executed the law? No. He's skirted the law. He's tried to attack the law because, as we have said numerous times over and over again on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, as per Article 6, Clause 2, the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And if he is to faithfully execute the supreme law of the land, that means he needs to uphold the law to the letter. But he hasn't done that. He's selectively enforced the law. He's gone out to subvert the law. He's gone out to create victims, as Jeremy has said, and he is going out to make us all be slaves to the state. That's what he wants. He wants full, absolute, and total control, and he wants us to just sit down, shut up, and take it. But that is not the nature, character, heritage, or spirit, or historical identity of the American people.
Here's something else. I'm reading this article from Politico about the whole speech today. Here's something else that was mentioned. Another quote by Adolf Obama himself. He says, "I'm not on the ballot again. I'm not looking to score some points. I think we can disagree without impugning other people's motives. But we do have to feel a fierce sense of urgency about it. In Dr. King's words, we need to feel the fierce urgency of now, because people are dying and the constant excesses for inaction no longer suffice. That's why we are here today, not to debate the last mass shooting, but to prevent the next one." Here's the thing. When Dr. King said that, he wasn't talking about the violence that was going on in the country. He was talking about the black man, the African American citizen, rising up and doing for themselves and not relying on the government. The fierce urgency of now was for them to accept the responsibility
going along with
of
the
their
American
own
identity.
accord and their own
along with
character.
The American identity.
So who's twisting whose words? Who's right? And who is twisting whose words now, Adolf? Yeah, nice doublespeak there.
Here's another funny thing, because his State of the Union's coming up. Guess who's been selected to deliver the response? Why, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. The one that sat there and blamed the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church shooting by that sycophant and sociopath Dylan Storm Roof back in July, back at South Carolina, Charleston. She blamed the Confederate flag for that, pulled it down. She played into this politically correct game, and she's the one that is selected to give the response to his State of the Union, which, mark my words, folks, he will put in more gun confiscation in that speech, because they've already said that he's come out and wanting this to be a revolutionary type thing. That's communist language right there.
Sure it is, and again, it's more of this projection and labeling. He's and bastardization of words. It's kind of like they took the word liberal and liberalism and made it their own and perverted it and bastardized it. Now he's doing it with the word revolution. And he's doing it to where, because he knows people are going to latch onto that and see it and say, well, now you're doing this, you're twisting words, and you're trying to obfuscate certain words to mean something else. He He knows exactly what he's doing. And for that reason, because you and I, Randy, and many other individuals that we know, and hopefully many of our listeners, understand history. And because we have an understanding of history, and certain sawed-off mental potentates who like to read scripture from the book known as the Chronicles of Farouk Tardia, we know that they are predictable. We knew he was going to do this from day one because he follows the mantra and the manifesto and the Dynasty Digest.
Red book, all of it.
That was Mein Kampf, the Communist Manifesto, all of it. Cloward and Piven, the whole 9 yards. They are predictable. And because they are predictable, many people would say, well, you still shouldn't underestimate them. There is no underestimating your enemy when you know how they are. Because if you know they're predictable and you know how they operate, you don't need to underestimate them because you could see what's coming down the pipe. We know what's coming down the pipe. All this does is allow us to be more patient, which we should do.
And
we need to be patient with this, but ever vigilant.
The gutless opposition party is not going to stand up for any of this. Again, folks, it's going to fall back on we the people, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this country, to stand up for our rights, to defend our rights. That's the way it was always meant to be. But, through all of these years of obfuscation of the truth and of re-education and of propaganda and of indoctrination, we have created this type of dependency in our society. And that is frustrating as all get out, because it means that it has made it all that much easier for these potentates, these despots, and these tyrants to try and encroach upon and belittle and infringe our fundamental and inalienable rights. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this gun grab, executive order or action or whatever they're going to call it now, because, he's actually calling this an executive action, if I'm not mistaken. And so that means he doesn't even have to sign it. It just... I can put it on paper and that's good enough. That's like a royal decree.
Emancipation Proclamation. Exact same thing. No different. No different. Carries no weight of enforceability under the law. Now, I've got one more thing that he said, and There's always been talk about, certain legislatures and legislators wanting to have certain provisions or things create microchipping of ammunition and firearms and some micro-stamping and all this other stuff. And then he plays right into this and actually touches on this. Says, if we could set it up so that you can't unlock your phone unless you've got the right fingerprint, why can't we do the same thing for our guns? How is that going to stop, Podunk Billy from going out and shooting Two-Toed Jose in a gang war if they have those firearms to where, they can unlock the firearms and only they can use it? You've watched Judge Dredd way too many times. The lawgiver, where it's synced to the DNA encoding of the particular judge in that movie. Remember that? It's the same thing. Stop watching so much damn television and movies. Do what you're supposed to do. Follow the Constitution. Lead the country in a noble and honorable fashion. Yeah. And I know that's asking way too much over your pay grade.
Everything that he does is diametrically opposed to what this country stands for and represents. Everything he does is against the will and desire of the American people. To once again kind of harp on that piece by Pat Goodell, where he spoke to Breitbart several weeks ago, saying that 3/4 of the American people feel as though the government is ruling without their consent. This is why, folks, this type of obfuscation, this type of doublespeak that we hear from the Chiquita-in-Chief standing there behind the podium, just thrusting out this verbiage that has no meaning other than take, confiscate, destroy. That is why the American people feel betrayed. That is why the American people feel as though the federal government is operating against them, because, truth be told, the federal government absolutely has assumed a position against us. You know, why is it that they always think that if we just try it again, if a different person implements it, then socialism will work? That will never work. It will never work. And these centralized types of authorities where they just bring everything from the top down and micromanage every facet of our day-to-day life never works, because it goes against human dignity. It denies who we are as people. It erases and belittles our individuality. That is the sick, twisted, dark, and inescapable truth that exists and surrounds this regime and any type of utopian socialist, radical, extremist, left-wing regime. This is why we must be ever vigilant against these sorts of groups and these sorts of actions. Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, going back to this whole doctors thing, according to this new gun control rule, and again, it's a rule that he's made, an executive action as a rule. Well, rules are made to be broken, period. So, under this new rule, executive action, doctors can report some mentally ill patients to the FBI. Well, who deems them to be mentally ill? I mean, what is true mental illness when it comes down to this? I understand paranoia, schizophrenics, multiple personality disorders, so on and so forth.
Bingo.
Where's the due process? Because unless a person's adjudicated in a court of law,
and you see that it's the same thing that goes in with this idea of using the so-called no-flight list to ban people that are on that. Again, where is the due process of being put on the no-flight list? And the leftists should really take offense to this, because if I'm not mistaken, didn't dear Eddie the Drunk Kennedy get put on the no-flight list? So, we're just going to ignore that? That, look, somebody can be erroneously placed on this, and then thereby deprived of their fundamental and unalienable rights. And let's tie it back into that Missouri license issue. You know, the driver's licenses that aren't allowed to be in, they're a whole state's population. An entire segment or geographical region would be deprived of their fundamental and unalienable rights because they'd be put on the no-fly list. This is the type of duplicitous action that this potentate, this dictator is trying to thrust upon us, and he is doing it outside the rule of law. And I agree with what Ted Cruz said, that he just once again doubles down on his efforts to strip and deprive the American citizens of their fundamental and unalienable rights. He said this on Glenn Beck's program this morning. And he said also that on his first day as president, because an executive order can be reversed by the chief executive, he would reverse all of Obama's executive orders. All of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And see, here's the thing. There is a way for a president to make an executive order that would apply to actually undoing things. Okay? When you have agencies that are unconstitutional, like the EPA, the ATF, the Bureau of Land Manipulation and Malarkey, which we mentioned yesterday, the president can actually write an executive order to not allow any of those agencies' regulations whatsoever to be followed or enforced. That is 100% completely constitutional, because as the executive chief, the executor of the laws, you do not have to enforce. In fact, you are prohibited from enforcing anything that is violative of the Constitution. So therefore, correct. So therefore, an executive order to say these are no longer enforceable as law. You don't even have to have Congress rescind them or even do away with those agencies. You just write an executive order and say, no, this is not going to be enforced because our branch of government is not going to do it. Period. You can't have the judicial branch do it. The judicial branch, even at any court,
but the way that the legislative branch
and the judicial branch cannot enforce those laws.
Is they can
Neither
use
can
the
the
power
legislative
to defund
branch.
these unconstitutional organizations, but they don't have the testicular fortitude to stand up and protect and defend the rights of the American people. Mm-hmm. That is what their job is. If you stop and think about it, the entire auspices of government, the entire purpose of government is to ensure that our fundamental and unalienable rights are not encroached upon as they are being right now. And they're doing a very crappy job of defending these rights because they're complacent. They are all part of this new utopian socialist. We want to grow it. They are collaborative. They want... Because what they see with people like Benedict Arnold, Paul Wright, they see this as an opportunity to gain more influence and clout with their buddies at the Chamber of Commies, and then to basically gain more wealth for themselves. They don't care if they lose their seat of power as long as they're protected with their wealth and that they're allowed to secure their wealth. And, this is what makes me so mad about the Occupy Wall Street types. All of these little sniveling wretches that go out and say, well, it's the top 1% earning capacity in this country that does it. No, it's not that. If you want to talk about the 1%, it's the 1% in government. It is this ruling elite that is doing everything to destroy our Constitution. That's who you ought to be venting your anger towards. That is who you should be holding accountable. But they're so drugged out or they're so deluded that they can't connect the dots. And I think it's willful on their part because if you remember who funded them, it's George Soros, another individual that we mentioned in yesterday's program. This is a type of guy, a member of the Jewish faith who ran around Eastern Europe reporting Jews to the Nazis so that he could get a cutback from it.
Which, by the way, he admonished as being one of the most fruitful and best times of his life as a child. So, I believe he was 15 or 16 when he was doing that. Maybe even 13 or 14. So, and again, and here's the thing. Not only are these individuals complicit with this, but they secure their power, and they don't want their power to be taken away. It's not that they're worried about losing their seat of power, because they've amassed huge amounts of wealth and this and that. It's they're doing this to retain their seats of power, to amass more wealth, because they use these actions in order to stay in power. And it plays right into that age-old joke that says that the freshman senator or congressman spends the first term trying to figure out how the hell they got elected,
this is also
and
why they would
every
want
term
to get
after
rid
that, how to
our
stay
fundamental
elected.
And unalienable right
That's
to
what
keep
they're
and bear
doing.
firearms, because it would give us an avenue to take things back. Because if you recall, we delegated authority. We delegated governing authority to the federal government. That is why it is a government of limited authority. And whenever power is delegated, it can be taken back. And the same can be true for any of the legislative power that the houses of Congress have delegated to the executive. They need to take that back. They need to become the legislature again. Stop being these little brown-nosing potentates that run around the marbled halls of Capitol Hill thinking that you've got some cushy thing that you can just go and be like Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy, what was he? He was going to be a great influence. No, he hasn't. Well, he's the most neutered bulldog I've ever seen.
Yeah, he was the bulldog of the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Going the attack dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and same with Darrell Issa. What happened to him? He just kind of fell off the map. This whole thing with Fast and Furious. Now, it's funny. We have to bring up Fast and Furious, Project Gunrunner, Operation Gunrunner, Gang Walker, White Gun, Castaway, every single operation and engagement that they've had that they've labeled. Because, see, here's the thing. That was all put out there. And again, this illegal operation, and it is illegal, folks, was ordered by Mr. Ubangi Lips himself. March 9th, 2009. White House spokesperson David Ogden had a press conference and specifically said, the president has authorized us to do this. Came right from the president. Again, the executive branch, which holds the authority over the Department of Justice.
Those guns
in which
got
all
up
of
on
this
their
was
own.
done.
Those guns got up on their own.
But, I didn't know those
children.
guns. Wrong. You're a liar. Yeah, they left on their own. You know, they saddled up and they got their ponchos and they got their ponchos. And I still believe, Randy, that mayor that was
We're Fast and Furious guns. Yep.
Yes. I will bet dollars to donuts that the firearms used in her murder were Fast and Furious guns. I guarantee it. And you heard it here, folks, first. You heard it here first. I guarantee you, I will bet money on it, that if those firearms, the ballistics come back, they will match those firearms.
Would not surprise me
shot
at
from
all.
Fast and Furious.
And,
by the way,
it
those
just goes
armed
to show,
individuals,
again,
they were
the
probably
duplicity
with the Sinaloa
of
cartel.
Obama, the way that he was standing there crying. I mean, if you go and look at the headline on Drudge right now, it shows this big picture of Obama sitting there brushing tears away from his eyes. Why didn't he show that kind of emotion when terrorists attacked? Why didn't he say that he was going to tighten controls and restrictions in the army after Major Nadal Hassan shot up Fort Hood? You know, that is the type of thing that he should have been more proactive about. But again, did he at once, at any time in this, mention Islamo-fascist terrorism? No. No. No mention of them. Yeah, no
Absolutely
mention.
not.
Other than
what about the
had
Chechen and Mario brothers?
Military-style weapons.
No mention of them. San Bernardino.
Shit.
No mention. Military-style weapons. Well, you know what? Let's look back again at the incident that happened in Elk, Texas, at Mount Carmel, and the Branch Davidians. I would say that was an act of terrorism against them. There most assuredly was military-style weapons used. After all, it was, in fact, a tank retrieval unit that was utilized to punch a hole in the wall and drop that gas bomb in there, that gas grenade that ignited the place on fire, which, by the way, was a direct violation of Posse Comitatus.
That laughable mention of a grenade launcher or missile launcher, as if somehow that has been a commonplace in your gun stores around this country. I can guarantee I have never, not once, seen a grenade launcher or rocket launcher at my gun store.
Armageddon!
I have not. I bet you haven't either. Yeah, if you wanted it, sure.
No, I haven't, not at my local gun store. However, the fact of the matter is it is perfectly legal under if you want it to have it. In fact, on my AR-15, I can get, I believe it's an M270. I think it's, I may be wrong, but it is an actual, 30 millimeter grenade launcher. Now, can I get the grenades for it? Hell no. Why? Because they are what's known as incendiary rounds and causes explosions. You cannot have them. Can I get smoke grenades for it? Yes. Because those are perfectly fine. But actual fragmentation grenades that are used on the military battlefields and in military theater situations,
Sure.
no. As a civilian, I wouldn't be able to get them. So, but the fact of the matter is, it's perfectly legal to have one of those attachments, which is what it is. It is an attachment. Why? Because it attaches to the underside, that barrel shroud. That's, oh my gosh, it makes it so much more menacing, having a barrel shroud. Pretty soon, you know, they're going to be outlawing prosthetic limbs of individuals because, oh, you can't have a black prosthetic. You know what would be great, Randy, is if we can have a product. And this just occurred to me. This is how spontaneous this is, and I think it's a brilliant idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, but prosthetic limbs, you know, arms or legs, let's outfit them with Picatinny rails, or make them look like barrel shrouds, to where you can actually put them on as sleeves, prosthetic sleeves over the limbs, to make them look less prosthetic, to where they have Picatinny rails where you can actually hook a wristwatch on there, or maybe a flashlight. How about a place where a person could, you know, put their iPod or iPhone while they're out, you know, jogging or doing whatever? Why not? I mean, hell, we have, you know, belts, and people that work in construction have tool belts outlined with many, many different pockets, many different places to attach things.
You know what it reminds me of? And this was in
it's a barrel shroud. It makes it fire fully automatic.
A campaign
to
ban
moron
guns because they said they were being converted to real guns. They didn't explain that in the ad. They just showed a kid shooting a kid. And it's like, toy guns are being converted to kill children.
How? Oh. Childhood memories.
You know, it just goes to show that these
I've shot my
people
brothers
use
with many a toy gun, and they've shot me. And guess what?
And
I turned out just hunky-dory.
It doesn't have to have any basis in reality. In fact, the more radical extremist left-wing you become, the more and more detached from reality and logic and rationality your arguments become. That is the truth. That is the truth they can't escape. And, you know, it's the same type of thing with Obama referring to himself 12 times in the speech. And, oh, this is great, too. Madam Clinton now takes credit for the president's plan to use executive actions to take guns. Wow. Probably.
Did she read that on the
hey, maybe that's where her
no
lost emails
trespassing
went.
Sign on the gates of Area 51? I'm just wondering, because she did mention Area 51 the other day. I don't know if you saw that. Quite possibly. I mean, she's got her own bunker for her server out there.
Anthony Weiner,
it's actually being gone through by Zorba the geek, I guess. Or maybe it's Mork from Mork and Mindy. Who knows?
We laugh about it just because if you don't have a sense of humor about it, it can absolutely drive you insane. They will drive you nuts because they are relentless in their stupidity. They are relentless from their disconnection with reality. And you know, again, we mentioned earlier in the show, divide and conquer. Well, think about this whole thing of the doctor reporting the patient, the supposedly mental ill patient. Is that not yet another tactic of divide and conquer to subvert the American people, to subvert the individual sovereign's sovereignty? I think that's it, absolutely and exactly what it is. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this just in, Randy, and it may be off of a slight topic, but Gigantopithecus, largest ape to ever inhabit Earth, died out because it didn't adapt its diet. Should we go down that road, or? Global warming! Global warming, and don't eat the school lunches because they're not nutritious for you.
Let's add this to it. A university is now mulling over the idea of punishing neck rubs as sexual battery. Where does it all end? Where does it all end? Yeah. Hey, why don't we ban her little sex toy that she's gonna cock and lock
paging Jessica Jen? Jessica Jen.
That's being used in a threatening manner. It would certainly kill people, especially if it's wielded by her. Therefore, we should ban them.
Yeah.
I demand the president to do an executive order right here, right now, to ban those things. Do it. Do it, Mr. President. Innocent children's lives are depending upon it. Children might see that thing, and they might be scarred for life, and we can't do that. Or worse yet, they'll be driven suicidal. And then they'll meet one of those firearms that's just running down the street by itself, and they will say, Mr. Firearm, can you please shoot me? Isn't it? But, hey, it doesn't matter, because Obama is the smartest constitutional scholar we've ever had. Clearly, he is the smartest constitutional scholar we've ever had. That's why he has no problem with following the letter of the law, right? Oops.
But by the way, it was reported that Jessica Jen sat on Santa's lap and made a wish for Santa, and she says, "I want a daisy red rubber double pump vibrating carbine." Santa responded, "Just shoot your eye out, kid." I mean, let's get rid of that stuff. And you know what? Here's the thing. Speaking of those things, there's 3 things that were mentioned. I believe it was Stalin or Lenin. I think it was Stalin who mentioned the way to bring down the United States. There's 3 things you can implement to bring down the United States: pornography, drugs, and alcohol. Now, they tried to ban alcohol, prohibit it, but, with the prohibition, but yeah, that was kind of, overturned and rescinded and repealed with the Constitution. Drugs, we see this big push of legalizing all drugs, because if you legalize them, then nobody will be killing each other in order to get them, and if people are getting them, people can just be happy and left alone, and blah, blah, blah. Thank you very much, whiny ass Gary Johnson. So, whatever. Go away. Oh, and by the way, banning pornography, I'm not a fan of pornography. I think it's a very detestable thing. However, the Supreme Court has actually ruled, and I can't remember the name of the case, but...
Yes.
It
Now,
is
here's
actually
something interesting. This would be a product for Jessica Jen, except she'd probably want to abort the fetus instead of playing music for it. But apparently
the name Larry Flint comes to mind.
Developed a vaginal speaker, so that a woman can just kind of shove a speaker up there and play music to the fetus. Great. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is calling for a big bank breakup.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait.
Why does everything taste like fish? Yeah.
Thanks for visiting Jack in the Box. Please speak loudly into the speaker and place your order.
No, it's something else.
Oh my God, that's
calling for a big bank breakup. Folks, again, you just can't make this stuff up. Bernie Sanders was out on a video here saying that Wall Street banks are about to basically go for another test, and they need to get rid of this too big to fail. Well, okay, I'm all for too big to getting rid of that, but we shouldn't do it with the heavy-handed government. Let the free market do it. Once again, what is so wrong with using your own cognitive ability, your own thought process, your own wherewithal. I mean, God. So, Bernie Sanders
libertarianism, socialism,
Bernie Sanders
and the Federal
is the
Reserve, money bomb. I win the debate. It's just that's what that is. That is exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of the banks.
Great. Well, meanwhile, we have all that's going on in the Middle East, thanks to Obama's leading from his behind, with Saudi Arabia having its problems, cutting diplomatic ties with Iran, and now we're put in a difficult situation because Obama went out and tried to force that nuclear negotiations with Iran down our throat, and so now we can't pick or choose sides on it. Now, everybody who's over there is pretty much evil and corrupt. Yes, I said that. Yes, I'm insensitive. I don't care. It's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, we're put in a very weak position, once again, because of Obama.
So?
No.
Again, this doesn't surprise me in the least bit at all. Not in the least bit. And see, here's the thing. Like you mentioned this morning, Saudi Arabia, they jerked their ambassador to Iran out of there. No more. Gone.
He served in Vietnam.
Well, the United States. Who's our ambassador? Well, that's John Frankenface Kerry. Oh, didn't he like?
And got a Purple Heart for it, and then threw it over the well, actually, somebody else's medals.
He threw over with
the White House fence.
Thistle bush or something over there, and yeah. He couldn't even throw his own medals. Wouldn't even throw his own medals. What a coward! What a gutless rectal aperture.
Scissorhands.
I've ever since he decided that he was going to run
we
back
don't ever
to
see from him anymore, do we?
Really?
After he pulled a Billy Clinton on his wife when she was dying with cancer. Yeah, these are the types of people that want to sit there and say you can trust them and to hand government things over to them. Really? But that's all right. Twitter's going to work this out so that people like Owl Gore can sit there when it comes up on the 27th of this month when he said that the world was going to end. They're going to now give him 10,000 characters, or at least they're mulling the idea of it, a 10,000 character limit for him to say why the world didn't explode.
Hey, Gabby. Randy, I must make this warning for us
I
that
didn't have
if
sex
we
with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
Go after people like John Kerry or Bubba Bill Clinton, I never met a woman that I didn't dislike.
Wait, Jeremy. It depends on what the definition of is.
If we go after him, and I don't care about if, but if we go after him, people like Rectal... Right. And so when we go after him, people like Rectal Manchow are going to, you can't talk about him because, it's not right and it's insensitive and I don't look as good in flannel as I thought I would. Listen. Yeah. Or, hey, if, she wants to feel, manly like she thinks she is or whatever, hey, tell you what, why don't you go make love to the front end of a speeding semi-truck? That'll work.
Hey, this is interesting.
This is interesting.
Big Mac, Cash-rich super PAC,
Big Mac truck, or
floundering
Peterbilt.
campaigns.
There you go.
In other words, we have the super PAC helping keep El Jefe Jebe Bush alive, and Marxist dubious Rubio, and John the Mushroom Kasich. Why, yes.
You mean like Wright?
Yes.
You mean like organization known as Right to Rise? Yeah. Which, by the way, I heard something interesting today. I guess the rumor mills are float around. Since you already mentioned the Dixie Turncoat,
and guess what
Nikki
I told
Haley,
you back in July, Jeremy? I told you she was pandering to try and get.
She may be considered as a
and she was
vice presidential candidate.
El Jefe, so that they could be the multicultural.
Yes.
Hope her hopes, you know, I bet her hopes are still very strong that El Jefe or either Marxist Rubio will be able to get it. Because it sure looks like they're doing well, right?
Exactly. And again, Right. Yeah, and again, this goes back to what I was saying about them being predictable. Both sides. If you understand who the progressives are, the individuals that have nothing but socialism and communism in their hearts, they don't care about this country. They put on this facade that they do. They don't. They really don't have this country's best interests in mind and at heart. They don't care. They just want to be in there and have power because they are absolutely corrupted. Both sides. And we've said this numerous times, and you and I, we don't have allegiance to any party.
And
again,
folks,
like I mentioned last night, our allegiance is to God,
we want
the
to
Father,
empower you.
Our country, the Constitution, and our family.
So that you can stand up for yourself, so that you can ensure that your fundamental and unalienable rights, and that your great birthright, all of our great birthright of the United States Constitution, we are bequeathed the greatest gift of any people on the face of the earth. We have to make sure that it is secure. And that is why we bring this news and information to you. Of course, we don't expect you to take it on face value. Rather, we expect you to go and look this stuff up on your own to validate what we're telling you. We're just shining a light onto it so that you can see it. And we appreciate you tuning in and listening every time that you do. We can't do this without you because we're doing this for you. Now, with that said, it is time to begin our descent. I'm sending the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'm Randy Wright, your captain, and as always, I'm joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We'd like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. Hope to see you again the next time we fly over the friendly airwaves, leaving you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment like we always do. See you next time, folks. Do take care.